Okay. Hi, everyone. I think we're going to get started. Can I ask everyone to please find a seat? Okay, I think we're going to get started.
Sorry.
For those of you, what? What? It's a panel. This room is for the Holocaust and Genocide education discussion, the gaps and opportunities. I just want to make sure everyone's in the right place. And news alert, if you're flying back to Los Angeles to LAX later today, the 6:15 flight is delayed. I keep getting notifications. Okay. All right, we're going to get started because we're on a tight schedule. We have some very important people up here on the panel. So, hi everyone, my name is Beth Kean, and I have the privilege of being the CEO of Holocaust Museum LA. Thank you. We have a nice fan club out here, I like it. This panel is really important, and it's building on a statewide initiative that really got started at the height of the pandemic. In 2021, our governor, Governor Newsom, decided that it was very important for him to make fighting anti-Semitism and eradicating hate in the state of California a priority for his administration. And he mentioned it last night in his remarks. And as part of that, he formed what is called the California Collaborative and the Governor's Council for Holocaust and Genocide Education. And it's a privilege for us because we have 3 out of the 4 co-chairs of the Governor's Council sitting with us on the panel right here, and another member of the council where I serve as well. And I'm just curious for those in the room, because the California Collaborative consists of 14 organizations. Are there any organizations that are with us today that are part of the collaborative? Hey. Great, I see plenty of hands. That's fantastic. And any other members of the council? Okay, well, we're going to enlighten you about what's been going on for the last couple of years and what's ahead. So this conversation is really a continuation of that momentum and really an opportunity to reflect on what's been done, what we've learned, and where do we go from here. So I just wanted to share a fun fact before I formally introduce our panelists. For those of you who aren't familiar with Holocaust Museum LA, I just wanted to share that we are the first survivor-founded and the oldest Holocaust museum in the United States. We actually got started in 1961 by survivors who understood the power of education and preserving artifacts and telling stories and the importance of preserving these survivor stories and passing them on for generations. That was in 1961. Then in 1978, our museum had its very first teacher training because they realized that teachers didn't have the tools to educate on this very difficult topic. So that was 1978. That was 7 years before our state formally mandated Holocaust education in our public schools. So I just thought that was a fun fact that I wanted to share. And we know firsthand that education works. We see the benefits firsthand. The ADL did a study a couple of years back that shows that students who get Holocaust and genocide education in classrooms, when they get older, they are more socially conscious-minded, they have more empathy, and they are more empowered to stand up against hate in their own communities. That is a fact. So I'd like to now introduce our esteemed panelists. I'm going to give some formal introductions. Okay, so we have, starting right here with Senator Senator Henry Stern represents California's 27th district, and in it, I'm sure we have a lot of people here from his district. In addition to being on the Jewish Caucus and the co-chair of the Governor's Council, he is a statewide leader on climate action, wildfire resilience, and environmental justice. He authored landmark climate disclosure laws and plays a central role in advancing carbon neutrality and resilient infrastructure. Not sure if many people knew that about you, so I thought I wanted to share that. Okay. Sitting right next to him is Superintendent Tony Thurmond. He is California State Superintendent of Public Instruction, leading the nation's largest public school system. A former social worker and longtime public servant, he has championed JPAC aligned priorities such as Holocaust and Genocide education, mental health services in schools, and equitable funding for underserved communities. The Honorable Thurmond is proactive in the legislature and as superintendent in fighting anti-Semitism in California schools and advocating for Holocaust education. And then sitting next to him is Dr. Anita Friedman. She is the CEO of the Jewish Family and Children's Services and president of the Correct Foundation, a nationally recognized expert in Holocaust and Genocide education. She co-chairs the Governor's Council for Holocaust and Genocide Education. Dr. Friedman is also a producer of major historical documentaries. And last but not least, we have Roxanne Makasdjian, the co-founder and executive director of the Genocide Education Project, a national nonprofit that helps teachers bring the lessons of genocide and human rights into the classroom, with a focus on the Armenian genocide. She also serves on the Governor's Council for Holocaust and Genocide Education and brings a background in journalism from her years at UC Berkeley and ABC News. Okay. Thanks for being here. So my first question is going to go to Anita, so that she could really set the table for us and provide some context around how the California Collaborative plays a big role in the governor's vision in eradicating hate. It's kind of a two-part question. And then the second part is really one of the first initiatives of the council was to do this comprehensive statewide survey, the first of its kind in our nation. And it would be great, Anita, if you can tell us about that survey and what it told us and if there were any surprises.
Thank you so much. Well, good morning, everybody. It's really good to see you all. I know many of you from throughout the state. I know how deeply you care about this issue, and so I'm going to tell you what I think. It's really an honor to be here with people on the stage here, because these are people on the fighting front lines in the state of California. And many of you in the room understand that. Many of you are also luminaries in the field. You understand deeply why this type of education is important. As Beth said, it works. It works. That's the most important point. It's not about teaching kids the bad things that happened to us, you know, in Berlin in 1945. It's about the triumphs and the tragedies of the Jewish people. It's about the universal lessons that all groups face who have a genocide story, and it's about the particular lessons of the Jewish people, or the Armenian people, or the Cambodian people. We have a shared understanding of what it means and how hate can deteriorate and how far it can go, and why it's important for society to look carefully and take care of its minorities. It's about how a society views its minorities in the end. I've been working inside the state education establishment for 5 years. I was appointed by the State Senate to the Instructional Quality Commission, which is a subcommittee of the State Board of Education. I had the opportunity to work with a lot of the leadership in the state, including our senator, including our superintendent, including many people in the field. And Holocaust education and genocide education has been mandated in the state of California since 1985. Okay. But very little happened besides making a regulation. And I can talk about why that is. But the state establishment, including the governor, became very alarmed with what is actually state-sponsored anti-Semitism. This is the first time we're seeing state-sponsored anti-Semitism. It's not events here or there, or a swastika here or there. It's basically systematic demonization of a people. And so the governor was interested, the superintendent was interested. Obviously, Senator Stern was a leader in saying, okay, we need to not just provide Holocaust and genocide education as kind of a secondary add-on to what's happening in individual schools. It has to be systematic. It has to be incorporated into the government. It has to be incorporated into what we teach children, because the way social change takes place is through a combination of carrots and sticks. We know a lot about sticks. We're going to sue you. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't do this. You can't do that. But what about the carrot part? What about the real way that we're going to have a future, which is to change what we teach our children? We have to change what children are taught in order to move things forward. And if we don't change what children are taught, we will see a deterioration of democracy. And frankly, if we don't change and reverse the direction things have been going in, it's going to be very uncomfortable for Jews, and I'm going to speak specifically about Jews, to live in this country in 30 years. Okay. But things are moving in a better direction because the governor and our leadership in the state decided we need to elevate Holocaust and genocide education to a different level. It can't just be piecemeal, different organizations working and finding schools who are going to welcome us in. They decided to, first of all, establish the Governor's Council, which includes the key leadership in the field of Holocaust and genocide education. Roxanne is one of them. It includes all the sectors of the society that have to be on the same page. It includes the private sector, which is me as the co-chair, Rob Bonta, Attorney General, the legal side. It includes Senator Stern. It includes the education establishment, superintendent, all together in common cause. Because it works. We know that we have to change what children are taught, and we know that children learn, and people learn actually, from here to here, not from here to here. So Holocaust and genocide education properly taught is not about a historical event that happened many years ago. From the Jewish community's point of view, Holocaust education is about telling the story of the Jewish people. It's about talking about the arc of Jewish history, and where is the Holocaust in that arc of history? It's about what we stand for, what we've contributed, what our triumphs are, not just our tragedies, and why it's in your interest to care about how different minorities are treated in your own country. That's what effective, proper Holocaust education is about. This is not your grandma's Holocaust education. Okay? This is a new form of effective Holocaust education, which now we're putting into place. The first thing we did is to do a study, like what is happening in the state of California? The state of California funded a major research study that we did in cooperation with the preeminent education research organization in the state, WestEd, and we researched what are the local districts doing throughout the state. There are about 2,000 school districts. There's also, including the charter schools. So we surveyed the entire state. It's a big state. There were 82 researchers working on this project. And we just published the results, first of its kind in the country, which says that only 26% of school districts are teaching anything on this subject matter. Okay. And why? This is the good news. They want to teach the subject matter. Holocaust education and ethnic studies are two sides of the same coin. Okay. The ethnic studies door is not always open to us. There's some resistance to including us. There are some adversaries that say the Jews are not an ethnic group. So why are you in this space? you're not an ethnic group. Our view is that every child should know their story, that a culturally competent classroom should make every child feel seen, know their story, know their family story, know their history, reduce stereotypes, and also teach children what they have in common. If we want to have a future as a society, children have to understand what they have in common. So now we realize that the problem is that the teachers didn't have the resources. It wasn't systematically implemented in the state of California. There's no research to evaluate, is it being done? Because basically, in the end, mostly people do what you measure. If we don't measure what's being taught and how it's being taught, it's not necessarily going to happen. The teachers need resources, they need support, they need education, and so the state also established, as a complement to the Council on Holocaust and Genocide Education, which runs out of the governor's office, a teachers collaborative, which is done through the Department of Education. The superintendent is deeply involved in the leadership on that, which includes all of the major organizations to focus on teachers, giving teachers the tool, the information, the support they need in order to teach the subject matter in every school district in the entire state of California. That's the vision. That's the goal. That will change the course of history.
Thank you. Thanks, Anita. So I'd like to now ask Senator Stern a question about SB 472, because that's one of the bills that we will be lobbying for today. If you could, Senator Stern authored this bill, if you could tell us what inspired you to write this bill. Was it because of the results of the key findings of the survey Anita just shared with us?
It's because you have an 18-foot tall photograph of my father-in-law on the side of your museum, who just, Joshua is watching me all the time. I can't go home.
Everywhere.
I can't go home unless I put my all into this. His daughter, this sort of, I like to think of her as an active, beautiful defiance that she's even on this planet, is here. That's my wife, Alexandra. And I'm so glad she joined today, because this was sort of our reunion a bit, in terms of, we met on Yom HaShoah when we brought her father up here with many of you to honor him. May his memory be a blessing. Joshua Kaufman is a giant, and when we actually launched the council that Dr. Friedman was talking about, it was actually a few days after the birth of our daughter, and after the passing of my wife's mother. We had finished sitting Shiva, and her mother was hidden during the Holocaust. And so, Joshua surviving 4 camps and then fighting in 3 wars in Israel is one part of our, whatever you want to call, our Holocaust story of a person, what happens to a life. Margaret, may her memory be a blessing, had a different story of being hidden, ending up in Canada, and then having the guts to break out and make her own way and find a life on her own and leave a marriage that wasn't going to work, and she was going to be stuck in this small life, and had the courage go to Los Angeles, become a typist, secretary for that Hamburger Hamlet in LA. A very fast typist, mind you. Yeah, and an elegant Hungarian woman, and somehow, Josh was on a cross-country trip that he just on a whim got on from showing up in New York City. He left Israel after these wars and just didn't know what his life was going to be. He had no one left. They killed his whole family except for his father, and his father was in New York, and where was it? Out in Williamsburg, in the heart of the Satmar Chassid. So he was they rolled deep. But that wasn't Joshua's way. Joshua was trying to make a different kind of life for himself. and drove a Lincoln Continental across the country in late 70s and gets to LA. And so like our Holocaust story is about those two people somehow surviving all this stuff in their lives and losing everyone that's important to them, and Joshua just figuring out how to become a plumber in LA and finally getting his hand on some tools and going in, his joke was just, tried to fix a pool, and then this couldn't do that, and had been in wars, had been mine clearing, but here's a 55-year-old man or 50-year-old man showing up in LA. They're like, you should retire. And he's like, no, I want to work. And the man worked for 45 more years as a plumber, like into his 90s, on call. And you see, if anyone from LA is here, has probably seen Joshua's Plumbing, has probably seen that van with the big red and blue letters and these Israel and American flags all around the top of it flying through. And he found a home at that museum that Beth's built and breathed such life into, and he found community, and they still sang old songs, and they kept Shabbat and just had this beautiful life in LA. And what people built out of that sadness and that horror is so inspiring. And now there's these little babies in the world that somehow are here because they decided to live. And that's what Jewish people do. When we teach this stuff, I was out at a high school in Northridge, and I was worried about the results of this survey. This is why we're running this bill. We're putting every school in the state on notice that, section 51220B of the State Education Code says particular emphasis, quote, particular emphasis on, quote, the Holocaust. You can't edit that part out of World War II, by the way. It also has to remind people, incidentally, about slavery, because you could teach about the Civil War as just a war between the North and South and say, and there was this other thing. That's an uncomfortable subject, though, but that's not what happened. So the bill's that reminder, but I've been trying to go out to classrooms and figure out what's going on. And I went out to Northridge, to an LAUSD school, Miss Blossom's class. It's like, 80% Latino, 15% API, a couple African-American kids, and like one Jewish kid and one not Jewish white kid. So what do they care? I mean, maybe the Jewish kid would care about the Holocaust, but why are they learning this? They were learning about a guy named David Levkowski, and great project down in LA, David Levkowski project. And they learned about this painter who survived. And they look at his paintings, and they look at the evolution of his life. And this is like right on the heels of COVID. And watching this kid, who's like the captain of the basketball team, this kid Javier, who has no connection to Joshua, my family, the Holocaust, David Levkowski, like he was digging into this material and watching this person who felt so alone, completely alone in their life, like all by themselves with no sense of time and totally, in camps. So like you've lost all sense of humanhood and personhood, and why would you live? Like what? And he had gone through this pandemic isolated and feeling alone and confused about his own life, and thought he was supposed to be the cool kid and like handsome guy, and he was like supposed to be the confident guy, but he actually was really having a personal crisis about all that, and found himself going inward. And somehow through David Levkowski's story in Miss Blossom's class, Javier not only like kind of found his own footing and actually started painting and did something different than the jock does, right? And tried a new part of his brain and tried a new part of his person that hadn't been woken up. But he also started asking his family questions about where they came from and what was our story and what happened with you. And he found out that his uncle had like marched through the desert and lost friends crossing the border back in from El Salvador, had to like get through the Darien Gap, and just insane in the 70s. And now has a life in LA, like Joshua's life. They have a recycled oil business, and they pick up the grease behind, fast food and stuff, and they gather it up, and they're putting their kids through school, and he's got a life, and he's like, I come from somewhere. And somehow this teaching, to Dr. Friedman's point, like somehow this teaching unlocks things in young people. There was one student in that class who was like, why are we teaching about this stuff? Isn't this like Zionist stuff or part of the Free Palestine thing? And she was kind of going off on me while I'm in there and saying, why, you know. Okay, she was fired up, right? 1 out of 30 was skeptical and thought this was some other agenda, and we didn't feel like we were reaching her. 28 kids in that class, though, who weren't Jewish, found things out about themselves. Filipino-American girl asked her grandma, like, okay, what happened to you during that period? Turns out she was interned in the Philippines in a prison camp by the Italians and the other side, and like, there was this, whoa. I thought I was just a kid in the suburbs of the San Fernando Valley. Like, I'm someone. I come from somewhere, and my life is rare and special and important. And I think that's what this education can do. It's not, we had to go into committee with some of you. I made Rabbi May walk like a half mile across a hot Capitol, but I didn't feel bad for him because Eva Bretler, who survived Bergen-Belsen, walked it a little faster than us. She had my wife helping her, though. So when you have Alexandra, her stride is strong. So she made it across, and we had to convince the Senate Education Chair that this stuff mattered, because she had kids in her office wearing keffiyeh saying, I'm Jewish, and this is Jewish exceptionalism to teach about the Holocaust. And this is a deeper Zionist agenda that is trying to push a conspiracy, and the Jewish Holocaust is exceptionalist colonial history, and that the real Holocaust is going on in Gaza. And she didn't just hear that lobbied in her office, she was at Coachella the weekend before. And if you're 28 years old and you're like an exciting new legislator and you're trying to figure out where's the trend, if you love Bernie and AOC and you're trying to like be that, and not in the way you guys think, but like in the way that you're inspired, who are you looking to for your compass? We had to, Eva Bretler had to refocus her and say like, don't erase me from this history, and don't erase Joshua. And that's what we're going to do. Is we don't have to change education. We just have to wake people up again and give them the tools to re-inspire. And when I'm in a room at the collaborative, as we will be in June, by the way. So if you know teachers who in your districts who want help, at a school district or a school board member says, "What can I do to help?" Find that one social studies teacher, and we'll pay for their hotel, and they can come to USC for 3 nights, and maybe wake some people up.
Thanks for sharing those important personal stories. I do think it's important to share why this bill comes with funding, because
I should add the grants. I'm sorry, I missed the grants.
Okay.
Right, so to Anita's point, not just sticks, but also carrots. So putting every school on notice in the state that you can't edit us out of history, and here's all the resources available to you. You can train your teachers. We're going to help your district build programs. We're going to get you, whether it's the bus to the museum, whether it's the mobile unit that they're building out in San Diego, whether it's, coming onto campus, all those things, we're going to make this easy for you. So it's both those pieces, and you have to understand it is not a foregone. People are getting weird lobbying on these bills when they come out. As soon as you say Holocaust education, you get very strange people who oppose these bills, so you can't underestimate that Senator Caballero, who will be the decider here in Appropriations Committee, and every member of that committee. So any of you have Senate meetings, I'm going to point Irie out in my office. You see her over there? So she's our magical Senate fixer. She stared down the face of Jewish Voices for Peace when they cornered me after this hearing and were screaming at me. And she was very courageous for doing that. And this is hard stuff, so we need your help. And it comes at a critical time. So I hope that was a good 472 fact sheet for you. Nice and concise, right? Sorry. You can edit out all my other questions. That's all I have to say for the rest of the thing, so I'm done.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so I'm going to ask the superintendent a question about the California Collaborative. since you've been playing such a big role there. Can you talk about the impact that the California Teachers Collaborative, and specifically the professional development summits that you have co-hosted? If you can tell us a little bit about that, that would be really helpful. And how it's part of our, the bigger picture eradicating hate initiative.
Thank you for that. I was wondering how I was going to follow Senator Stern. But I'm grateful for him. When he first reached out to me about the bill to fund the ability to create the council and to fund education on Holocaust education, the first thing we talked about was our teenage experiences breakdancing. It became very clear that we had a story together that many young people have. They have many things in common, but the world seeks to drive that apart. The world seeks to promote a different narrative of hate. Education is the only thing that will be powerful enough when it comes to young people to stamp out hate. And it's been a tremendous honor to work with my co-chairs on this collaborative and my colleague on the council. And I want to tell you something before you go. No one is going to allow the U.S. Department of Education to be abolished. Let me just be clear about that. Not on our watch. Because education is the cornerstone of our democracy. And while we have challenges on campuses all across the country, and trust me, I get called about everything happening at our 10,000 schools. I can't even walk down an aisle in a grocery store without someone stopping me and saying, "Excuse me, can I talk to you about?" And I just take those calls, and then I call those superintendents, and we say, "Hey, what's going on?" And when we've made a pledge. We don't have the staff to do it, but the senator's going to get us a civil rights department so that we can investigate every claim of anti-Semitism. We're going to need your help. We're going to need your help talking to legislators about the importance of that in SB 472. Even though we don't have that, we're not staffed that way, we've made a simple pledge. Every single claim of anti-Semitism on a school campus, we will investigate, we will intervene, we will provide resources, because we believe that education to end hate is our mission. And young people are co-opted every single day by narratives. And to put it in a really difficult context, 63% of American youth who are Gen Zers or millennials do not know about the Holocaust. You heard Dr. Friedman talk about the low rate of schools that are able to teach about the Holocaust. You know, not this legislator, but legislators, other legislators, not this one, pass measures all, and not me when I was there, pass measures all the time that don't really get implemented. And so we have to measure the things that Dr. Friedman said so that we know that they're happening. And I'm pleased to tell you that because of the collaborative and our partners there, thank you for the incredible work, 3,000 educators have been trained in teaching about Holocaust and genocide awareness. And we can do more. There's an institute coming up in the summer, and we can still take a few more folks. That was a great plug for it. You know, we've hosted collaborative sessions where we've had Holocaust survivors or family members tell their stories. For one Yom HaShoah, we arranged for a survivor to tell her story to students at 6 different schools, some in person, some streaming, because people need to hear those personal stories that are being told and that have been lived. They also need to see the intersectionality, that hate against any group is a threat to all groups. And anybody here from Riverside? Anybody? Riverside? Hey, we got somebody from Riverside. We got one. You know, we tell students about Mr. Acevedo, who was a soldier sent to liberate folks in the camps, and he himself became detained and starved and beaten and was put into the camps. We talk about the intersectionality because I believe that we have to build on the foundations that have always existed across our communities. And I'm grateful to our partners at the LA Jewish Federation who allowed me to take my first trip to Israel with 40 educators. And they gave us this theme. They said, it's all complicated. And we saw for ourselves, and we heard from individuals about the relationship between the Jewish people and the Palestinian people, and conversations that go beyond what people are talking about and the platitudes that people are talking about. But we have to have those kind of courageous conversations, and we will continue to investigate. We've already held findings against a number of school districts where we've cited them for anti-Semitism and said, you need to go back and change your policies. You need to go back and retrain your staff. We're still working on some right now, a la Pajaro Valley Unified. I know that a lot of you saw the school board meetings, and we're doing some interventions there as we speak. But we have to continue to have these conversations, and the collaborative is an incredible resource, because not every teacher knows how to teach about the Holocaust. In the same way, not every teacher knows how to teach about slavery. Not the same way, not every teacher knows how to teach about the experience of Native American people. There has to be cultural competency behind these conversations, or more damage will be done without that training. So, in my humble opinion, as you have your lobby day today, if you get 15 minutes with a legislator, in my humble opinion, everyone in Sacramento says make small talk for 14 minutes and then try to talk about the most complex thing that you have in that remaining minute. I invite you to flip it. Immediately, get into why you want them to vote for SB 472, and if you're lobbying for something else, and why you want them to vote against it, why that's important. They will listen to you as constituents. And when you get a chance, visit those same legislators in your home district. They're home on Fridays. Get into why it's important that they support this bill and the other bills that you are supporting. And then after that, make small talk. Because they're going to get crashed with 8 or 9 meetings consecutively, and it's going to be hard for them to retain the important stuff. You let them know why this bill is so important, to have funding to promote Holocaust education, because it can't just be a mandate without the resources to implement. You have to have the resources to facilitate. So thank you for being a part of a great lobby day. Thank you for supporting the collaborative, and we look forward to the great work together.
Thank you, Superintendent Thurmond, for that great advice. So Roxanne, I'd like to ask a question related to the bill as well. Since you've been working in genocide education for decades, can you please share how you think this bill will support the needs of teachers?
This bill, from my experience, means everything for supporting teachers. So the Genocide Education Project, which I run for the last 20 or so years, and in very strong partnership with Holocaust education organizations in my hometown, San Francisco, with Morgan Bloom, who's heading the Holocaust Center and their education programs now, as recently as a couple of months ago with the Museum of Tolerance, upcoming collaborations with the Holocaust Museum in LA, Facing History, and ourselves was one of our very first collaborators in Northern California. So I'm very proud to have had these relationships, and I'm very gratified that the Governor's Council and the California Teachers Collaborative have given us a much bigger boost that we've been waiting for these 20 years, and that is further, deeper relationships with other genocide education organizations that could extend our reach much farther than we ever could have the previous 20 years as a small nonprofit, as Dr. Friedman said, just knocking on individual school district doors, begging them to take an interest and see the value of having us come in to do a training on the Armenian genocide and its connections and parallels with other genocides. genocides. Now with these recent bills and the new one on the floor, SB 472, we could make our dreams come true in California, and that is schools that have been telling us, they told us in this survey, they told us 20 years ago when we did a much smaller survey with the Superintendent Torlakson at the time about whether school districts are teaching about the Armenian genocide. It was interesting to see we got very similar results, and that schools want to teach this subject, but they just don't know where to start, and they don't have the appropriated funding to actually do what it takes. This isn't an easy topic to teach just from, getting some information from Wikipedia, okay? This is a very sensitive topic. It needs very appropriate pedagogy, sensitivity, as I said, in all aspects of how this is taught and how it fits in with the current curriculum and framework in California. So that needs expertise. There are organizations now like ours that have this expertise on specific aspects of history, but school districts didn't have the wherewithal, and they weren't given the wherewithal to invite us in. So we went where school districts could afford to bring us in. But there are so many that can't, and particularly in rural areas where they have layers of other obstacles, and we also have layers of obstacles of getting to them. So providing grant opportunities for school districts to be able to get this appropriate education will make all the difference. So I'm so thrilled to see all of you here. It's a very impressive gathering, and to see so many activists who, from your own personal experience with your kids in school, and from your own regional perspectives, to tell your representatives here that this is really necessary. And finally, we want to, as Dr. Friedman said, be systematic about this education. Make it part of the curriculum in a standardized way across the board. And then learning if that's happening later. One thing that Gen Ed wasn't able to do those years ago when we put out the letters to school districts and we got the surveys and all of the trainings that we do across the country, we just don't have the wherewithal to do the follow-up we need to find out if this is happening in the school districts, to what extent, and what else they need from us. So it all comes down to this collaboration, the collaborative, the council, and this amazing allyship that we've been able to put forward. One thing that struck me with Senator Stern's comments about not allowing schools and curriculum to edit out the Holocaust. In the Armenian case, we have been edited out of World War I history from day one, and that is the legacy and the continuing genocidal legacy of successive governments of Turkey spending billions of dollars all over the world and reaching into our school districts and our state assemblies all over this country to deny the Armenian genocide happened. So again, as was said before, this education is very current and very relevant. The damage of not teaching this history and the damage of letting denial perpetuate has consequences today for all of the lived experiences of our students, and we're trying to get them to become, active global citizens in their own communities and in the broader community. Just last week, when the Armenian genocide was being remembered by the state legislature here, California is the strongest state that recognizes and educates on the Armenian genocide. Yet again, the Turkish government came here and contested that resolution of remembrance. And we're very grateful to the Jewish caucus members, including Senator Stern and so many others, to stand up very strongly and unanimously push back that effort. But the fact that they would continue and continue to do it, and complaints in school districts. We had to be involved in a Massachusetts lawsuit that contested Massachusetts education mandate to teach about the Armenian genocide because it was insulting to the local Turkish community. And I could give examples over and over again. You know, the Genocide Education Project, yes, we come from a place, our best expertise is on the Armenian genocide, but we always, in our trainings, which should be done, which is also a kind of a basis of the California Teachers Collaborative, make connections and parallels to other genocides in history. That's very important for students to understand that there's this continuum that must be continuously fought, a continuum of hate that never lets up. And the dangers of denial are very real. The connection between the Armenian case and the Holocaust is stronger than almost any other comparative looks. Some of you might recognize Hitler's quote to his generals on the eve of moving into Poland when he was encouraging them not to be worried about all the destruction they were going to wreak. And at the end of that diatribe, he said, "After all, who today remembers the annihilation of the Armenians?" What a strong lesson for teachers and for students of the damage of forgetting, the damage of denial, that not just to the victims generation after generation of not having reparation in any way, emotionally and morally, but also reparation of their culture, reparation of their national survival as a people, but also empowerment to future perpetrators. That's what that statement means, and that's what we're trying to get our students to realize. So just circling back around, it means everything, SB 472, and what it could help do. Thanks.
Thanks, Roxanne. I think there was just one more important thing I wanted to touch on with Anita, is that one thing that came out of the survey was that teachers don't have access to new materials, vetted materials. Many of the resources they're using, are old. So can you touch on how can we ensure that the teachers now have access to proper resources?
Well, I'll say a few things about it, because again, we need the partnership between the private sector and government in order to change the course of history here. I think most of us understand that what stands between us and destruction, either death or having to relocate to another country, is government. If government is with us and aligned with us, we have a chance. If government throws us under the bus, we all know what happens. So providing these kinds of resources is really critical. That's what these two entities that we've just recently created, on the high level, policy level with the Governor's Council on Holocaust and Genocide Education, and the collaborative, which is actually in the trenches with the teachers, bringing them together to do training and education, providing resources. The funding is absolutely essential in order to provide those resources. The interest is there. That's the good news. The interest is there on the part of educators to learn this subject matter. That we have social studies teachers and ethnic studies teachers and history teachers, administrators of districts, all wanting to do this. We just have to provide the funding in order to do it. It's provided through a number of different resources. But the Governor's Council, as a result of the research, made a recommendation, a series of recommendations. There's 10 major recommendations. These are 2 of them. The other recommendations include setting standards and elevating this issue and creating resources and frameworks. So it's a master plan for how to go about making change. And it's the key, as everybody said here, is a combination of education and allies. We have allies. We have wonderful allies in the private sector, other ethnic groups, and government. And so that's the good news. The good news is that we have put in place, also with the support and the leadership of JPAC. JPAC has been on the front lines, the Jewish Caucus has been on the front lines, made this an issue, because in the long run, this is the solution. We're not going to get where we need to go through lawsuits only. I think we all understand that. So the whole issue of changing what children are taught is critical. Government's behind us now. The education establishment is behind us now. So now the work begins, and providing these resources and the funding to do it is the key. So I want to thank everybody here because so many of you are involved in this. There are many other organizations here who are leadership in this area of Holocaust and genocide education. And so that's the good news. The good news is that we have a Governor's Council. We have a teachers' collaborative on Holocaust and genocide education. The bad news is that we really need it.
No, we are going to take questions. And okay. Oh, wait. Can we? Well, okay. We're going to open it up for questions. We are coming to the end of the session, but I do want to say that California is the only state in the country doing this work. There are many other Holocaust institutions throughout the country, and they are so jealous when I talk to them and tell them about the work that we are doing. And the fact that it's being led by our elected officials, our state leaders, that is so critical. And so we are lucky that we live in a state that cares and is interested in fighting hate and anti-Semitism. And this bill, SB 472, is so critical because it's part of the process. We're thinking about the future here. It's not just now, it is well into the future generations of children who need to be educated and continue to be educated about this subject. And so thank you so much to all of our panelists who are with us today. Okay, Senator Stern said he will stick around also because since we are lobbying for SB 472, we do need to make sure we feel comfortable. So he said he will stick around. Now we can pass the microphone around for a couple of questions. So I think, do you want to, okay.
Hi, everybody. My name is Giti Bolor. I'm an Iranian Jew here, and I'm one of very few Iranians here. I think there's only one more person here. Thank you so much for everything that you do. And I'm really happy to see that we're moving forward with really making a difference with the bill you're putting forth. Something is missing in this education. What you're introducing to the children, it starts from the Holocaust and on, from my understanding. The depth of anti-Semitism and the history of anti-Semitism, it's so much deeper. If you go back to the Middle East history from 3,000 years ago, where my relatives and ancestors were from the Middle East, anti-Semitism existed from 100, 150, 200 years ago, and even 3,000 years ago. Jews were mistreated. They were in the ghetto. The women were not raped because they were Jew and they were called dirty. When I came here in 1979, I was 12 years old. And in Iran, I went to school until I was 12. And in my own school during the Shah period, I was called a dirty Jew by my classmate. Now, when you teach kids about Jews and the Holocaust, they must know the history of the exile, the mistreat, the discrimination, the execution of Jews everywhere in the world. And then you come to Holocaust education.
Correct.
Because it is not enough to tell people there were a group of people that came
You're
in
absolutely
1940s
right.
and
No,
they were
that is
killed.
true.
So
Yeah.
please incorporate
Well, it
the
is-
Middle East in
okay.
your studies, and that
Thank
will
you.
offset ethnic curriculum and the falsehoods and the lies that they're teaching about
Okay.
the Middle East.
In the interest
Please
of time,
incorporate that.
I totally understand the question and I appreciate that question. But no, we aren't talking about the actual curriculum that's being taught in the classroom, because everything that you are saying is actually part of the curriculum. That is so important. Everything that you just said, so important, and we totally agree. Anti-Semitism did not start and end with the Holocaust. It goes back for millennia, and we do teach everything that you just mentioned is a big part of the curriculum. But thank you for bringing it up. And I don't know if anyone else on the panel wants to expand, but okay. But I do ensure everyone in this room that that is being taught in the classroom. I think we have time for
we
2
can
more
take
questions.
One more.
Okay, one more, Miller says. Okay.
Hi, I'm Stacy Dorenfeld, and I'm with Hadassah.
Okay.
I think this is fabulous. I think this is, my heart is with you. My problem is, we have bad actors out there. We have teachers that refuse to teach the way we want them to teach. They have their own itineraries, they want to do it their way, and we don't have enough guardrails to have these teachers do it properly. So if they're off on a whim, and they want to teach anti-Semitism their way, they will. What do we do? They have tenure, they have whatever they have, they're in the union. We can bring a horse to water, but we can't make it drink. So what do we do?
So the first thing is, any teacher who is sharing their view about an international conflict is misguided. It is not for them to give their opinion. That is what they should not be doing. There are teachers who are being held accountable and disciplined for that type of activity. Now, with over 1,000 districts, every district has to intervene individually, but we have also written to every district and talked to every district to say that they must hold teachers accountable and staff for offering their individual view. That goes against every guideline, framework, guardrail that exists for our schools. And so we will continue to be vigilant to make sure that no one is standing up there and sharing their personal view. And as I said before, anywhere in any school where there's anti-Semitism, we will be there too.
Can I add just one quick thing? So, but he's doing that somehow against all odds on a shoestring right now. Like, Superintendent Thurmond is himself making phone calls to school districts. This is the guy, right? Like, going way, way above and beyond what a normal superintendent of public instruction has ever done. Let's be clear. Ever. Full stop. Does it sound like the governor now? Full stop. Sorry. But, yeah, but we're going to, the other piece of the Jewish Caucus's push here around reform and putting stronger guardrails in place is going to need to bolster the superintendent's Department of Civil Rights and not just make it something that's an afterthought, but actually bolster it, to have someone, a watcher on the wall, someone coordinating that on anti-Semitism specifically. So the other thing you guys are lobbying on today is not just the good part of here's how we can solve it, here's how we can teach empathy, here's what we can put into the education, into our classrooms, but also that enforcement piece and that guardrails piece that we want to bolster. And that's what, when you heard last night about the ethnic studies legislation and what we're trying to work out with the other caucuses, I think the agreement we're all getting very close to coming to is around putting actual teeth to these rules. And we're getting there. So it's good news. Sorry, yeah.
Okay, so I think that will conclude our
Okay.
session today
All right.
with that. Thank you. Thank you to all of our
Thank you, guys.
panelists. Thank you, everyone, for your passion. I have one housekeeping thing. We're going to head into the lobby, into lobby training. Everyone has a number on your badge, so make sure you find the table with your group number. That will start at 11:10.